The nanny heard a millionaire's son crying upstairs. When she opened the door, she was... Harper Lane had never imagined stepping into a world of towering white stone walls, heavy iron gates that opened by remote, and gardens so vast you could lose your way. But one phone call from the agency changed everything. A family needs a full-time nanny for their 8-month-old. The mother has passed away. The father is a wealthy businessman working from home. They want someone to start immediately. Harper accepted. Her previous job had just ended, and her savings were running low. She hadn't paid much attention to the word quiet in the description until the taxi stopped at the black gates of the coal estate the next morning. The gates opened slowly. Pulling her small suitcase, Harper walked the gray stone path to the grand house with steep roofs and tall glass windows catching the early light. A sturdy middle-aged woman in a neat uniform opened the door. "I'm Mrs. Carter, the housekeeper. Come in. Mr. Cole is in his study. Baby Noah is asleep. I'll show you everything before I leave." "Leave?" Harper asked, surprised. Mrs. Carter nodded. "Yes, I have to return to my hometown for a few weeks. My sister's in the hospital." Mr. Cole agreed, "and luckily you arrived just in time. While I'm gone, you'll care for Noah and manage the basics in the house. Cleaning, laundry, groceries, they're all taken care of through services." She led Harper through the house, showing her each room, where the medicine was kept, where Noah's supplies were stored, his feeding and sleeping schedule. Finally, they stopped at the nursery. The room was filled with gentle light, cream-colored walls, and a white wooden crib in the center, a mobile turning slowly above it. Noah lay sleeping, breathing softly, his tiny face serene. Harper's heart melted instantly. Most of the time, Mr. Cole stays in his study or bedroom. He's not unfriendly, just still grieving his wife, Mrs. Carter said quietly, her eyes softening. "Do your job well, care for Noah. That's all that matters to him." That afternoon, Mrs. Carter left the estate. Harper stood at the doorway, watching her car disappear, then turned back into the house, suddenly aware that this vast space now held only 3 people: herself, Noah, and the man she had barely spoken to. 2 silent days passed. Harper followed Noah's schedule, sometimes hearing Adrian's footsteps in the hall, but never seeing him stop to talk. The house remained still, broken only by soft lullabies and the baby's rare giggles. On the 3rd night, Noah woke earlier than usual. Harper was rocking him gently when she noticed the baby's cries seemed to echo into a strange, deeper silence. She placed Noah back in his crib, tucked him in, and listened closely. A faint noise came from the end of the upstairs hallway, from Adrian's bedroom, a soft thud, then nothing. Harper hesitated for a few seconds, but instinct told her to check. She knocked on the door. No answer. Pushing it open slightly, she stepped into a dimly lit room. The smell of medication mixed with alcohol hung in the air. Adrian lay on his side in bed, his face pale, eyes closed, breathing slow. On the nightstand sat a nearly empty bottle of sleeping pills, with a few scattered on the floor. "Mr. Cole? Adrian?" Harper rushed over, shaking his shoulder lightly. No response. Her heart pounded, hands trembling. She grabbed her phone, dialing 911, forcing her voice to remain steady. "There's a man. He's taken sleeping pills. His breathing is weak. And there's an 8-month-old baby in the house." The dispatcher instructed her to check his pulse and place him on his side to prevent choking. Harper obeyed, her own heartbeat thundering. From the next room, Noah began crying louder, the sound cutting through the heavy silence. Harper called out, "Noah, just a moment," then turned back to Adrian, gripping his cold hand. "You can't give up. Noah needs you." The wail of an approaching ambulance grew closer. Harper dashed to Noah's room, scooped him up, wrapped him in a blanket, and returned to Adrian's side, her eyes never leaving him. Minutes later, 2 paramedics arrived. They fitted an oxygen mask, checked his heart rate, then lifted him onto a stretcher. One asked, "Does he live alone?" Harper, holding Noah tightly, answered softly, "It's just him and his son." As they carried Adrian down the stairs, Harper followed, her heart still racing. The house no longer felt like the cold, immaculate place she had known for the past 3 days. It felt like a home desperate to be saved, much like the man lying unconscious on the stretcher. When Harper carried Noah into the hospital hallway, the cold neon lights cast a pale glow across her face. Footsteps of rushing medical staff echoed along the white-tiled floor. Adrian was wheeled straight into the emergency room, the door closing behind him, leaving Harper standing still with Noah in her arms. Noah had stopped crying but clung tightly to her shirt, his uneven breaths betraying his lingering fear. Harper sat on a green plastic chair in the waiting area, gently rocking him. In that quiet moment, she realized she had never felt a night stretch on this long. About 40 minutes later, a doctor emerged. Pulling down his mask, his tone was calm but firm. "He's going to be fine. The dosage was significant but not enough to cause cardiac arrest. We've flushed his system and will keep him under observation." Harper nodded, part relief, part tension still clinging to her. "May I see him?" The doctor glanced at Noah, then nodded. "Just a few minutes. He's still weak." Harper carried Noah into the hospital room. Adrian lay in bed, his face still pale, but his eyes open, a mix of fatigue and surprise when he saw her. His brow furrowed slightly, his voice hoarse. "You are—" Harper stepped closer, setting Noah into the baby seat beside the bed. "Harper Lane, the new nanny." Adrian closed his eyes briefly, as if swallowing his embarrassment. "I didn't mean for you to see that," Harper spoke softly. "If I hadn't been there, Noah might have lost his father." The words made Adrian turn toward his son. Noah sat in the seat, tiny hands fiddling with the safety straps, wide eyes studying his father's face as if trying to place it. A long, quiet moment passed between the three of them. "Thank you," Adrian said quietly, his voice caught between gratitude and heaviness. Harper simply nodded, saying nothing more. She knew empty reassurances wouldn't help him now. The next day, when Adrian was discharged, Harper took Noah upstairs to the nursery, while Adrian followed slowly behind. The house was as silent as it had been that morning, but within that silence, Harper sensed something had shifted. A fragile thread had just been tied. The afternoon Adrian was discharged, Harper carried Noah upstairs to the nursery first, while he followed slowly behind. Neither spoke, only the sound of footsteps and the ticking of the clock filling the still air. Harper laid Noah in his crib, patting him gently back to sleep. When she turned, Adrian was still standing at the doorway, one hand resting on the frame, his eyes fixed on his son. For a moment, he looked like a man standing outside a world he didn't know how to enter. That night, Harper went to the kitchen to make a cup of ginger tea. Passing through the living room, she found Adrian sitting alone in the dark, the soft glow of a desk lamp pooling around a stack of open files. He looked up, pausing when he saw her. "Am I interrupting?" Harper asked quietly. "No," Adrian said, his voice low and rough. "Just thinking." She started to leave, but instead placed the cup of tea on the table in front of him. "Ginger tea helps you sleep better than pills." Adrian looked at the cup, then at her. No words of thanks, but his gaze was less guarded than before. Day by day, Harper began to notice a peculiar habit in Noah. He often startled in his sleep, eyes half opening before closing again, lips moving as if searching for someone. She guessed it was because he still didn't feel completely safe. She began taking him out to the garden in the mornings. The lavender swayed gently in the breeze, birdsong mingled with the rustle of leaves. Harper read stories in a slow voice, humming lullabies under her breath. Within days, Noah was smiling more, babbling more. Adrian would often pass by, sometimes stopping at his office window to watch. He would see Harper on the wooden chair, Noah in her lap, tiny hands tugging lightly at her shirt. The sight made him pause, but then he'd turn away, as if not ready to step into that warm space. Late one night, Harper woke to Noah's cries. Carrying him downstairs to soothe him, she passed the porch and saw Adrian standing in the garden, hands in his pockets, eyes lifted to the night sky. "You're still up?" Harper asked softly, careful not to wake Noah further. Adrian turned, his gaze in the moonlight, both weary and searching. "Does he cry at night often?" "Not really," Harper said gently, rocking Noah. "Just some nights when he startles." Adrian was silent for a long moment before speaking, his voice dropping lower. "That night, when my wife died, I was in another city, signing a contract I can't even remember now. I got the call, and everything collapsed." Harper didn't interrupt, only stood beside him, listening to the heavy rhythm of his breathing, mingling with the rustling leaves. "I blamed myself," Adrian continued, eyes fixed on the distance. "If only I'd been home. If only I'd driven her that night." Harper placed her hand lightly on his arm. No hollow reassurances, only her quiet presence, letting him know he wasn't speaking into the void. Noah shifted, his breathing slowing. Harper glanced down and smiled. "He's asleep." Adrian looked at his son. For the first time in months, his eyes held not just darkness, but a faint glimmer of light. Harper knew. A small crack had formed in the wall he had built around himself. In the days after that night in the garden, Harper noticed small changes in Adrian. He lingered longer when she fed Noah, sometimes carrying his son around the room a few times before handing him back. But the shadow in his eyes hadn't fully lifted. One afternoon, heavy rain poured outside. Harper had just lulled Noah to sleep and went to the kitchen to make tea. Entering the living room, she froze. Adrian sat alone on the sofa, an empty glass in front of him and a bottle of whiskey nearly gone. The warm light revealed red-rimmed eyes and a small bottle of sleeping pills perched at the edge of the table. Harper stepped forward, her voice low but steady. "How much have you taken?" Adrian looked up with a crooked smile, his voice hoarse. "Enough to make things feel a little lighter." Harper didn't snatch the pills right away. Instead, she set the cup of tea on the table, close to the glass of whiskey. "This doesn't make it lighter. This makes you disappear." Adrian leaned back, tilting his head as if even breathing was exhausting. "You think you know what I need?" "No, but I know what Noah needs," Harper said, meeting his gaze. "He needs a father who's awake, arms that will still be here when he wakes up." Adrian rose abruptly, closing the distance between them in a heartbeat. "You don't understand this kind of loss. You're right, I didn't lose a wife, but I've lost family. I know how cruel it feels. You've already lost one person. Don't make Noah lose another." The air between them felt thick, neither speaking for several seconds. Then from upstairs, Noah's cry cut through the silence. Adrian froze, then turned and hurried up the stairs, lifting his son into his arms. From the bottom of the staircase, Harper saw him hold Noah tightly, whispering something she couldn't hear. But she knew. He had just chosen to come back. That night, while Harper was folding Noah's clothes, Adrian stepped into the nursery, still holding his peacefully sleeping son. He paused in the doorway and spoke softly. "I haven't held him since the funeral. I thought if I touched him, I'd break, but I was wrong." Harper smiled gently, saying nothing. She knew a real turning point had begun. That night, the rain had stopped, but droplets still clung to the lavender bushes, the garden lamps casting a golden glow that made each bead glisten like crystal. Harper bent slightly, brushing her fingers over a pale purple stem, the soft fragrance mingling with the damp earth after the rain. Adrian stepped onto the porch, pausing for a moment before walking closer. "Beautiful, isn't it?" His voice was low but warm. Harper looked up, offering a faint smile. "Yes, beautiful," but they fade quickly. He stayed silent for a few seconds before asking, "Where's your family?" Harper lowered her head slightly, her fingers tightening around the lavender stem. "I don't have one anymore." She took a deep breath, her tone slow but steady. "My parents died in a car accident when I was 13. After that, I lived with my aunt, but her husband—" She stopped, her eyes drifting into the dark distance. "He wasn't a good man. More than once. He tried to do what he shouldn't." Adrian's hands clenched in his pockets, his gaze darkening. Harper continued. "I left. No money, no place to stay. Some nights I slept at a bus station, clutching the only backpack I had. I thought maybe my life was over." She lifted her gaze. In the warm light, her eyes held both pain and an unyielding strength. "But then, I realized if I was already at the bottom, the only way left was up. I took any job I could get, worked during the day, studied at night. Bit by bit, I pulled myself out of that hole." The garden fell into silence. Only the wind stirred the rain-damp blossoms. Adrian looked at Harper for a long time, seeing not just a nanny, but someone who had fought to survive. "You faced it all alone?" he asked, his voice soft but full of respect. "Exactly," Harper smiled faintly. "I had myself." Something in Adrian's chest tightened, a mix of ache and admiration. He knew there are wounds no one can see, yet they are the very thing that guide a person forward. And tonight he understood. Harper wasn't just caring for his son. She was showing him the way out of the dark. After that night in the lavender garden, when Harper shared her life story, it felt as though an invisible thread had formed between her and Adrian. Not a sudden, overwhelming connection, but a quiet presence, enough for both to know they were no longer alone. In the days that followed, Harper noticed Adrian appearing more often in Noah's little moments. He began holding his son while she fed him, sometimes changing his diaper, clumsily but trying, and even taking Noah to the garden in the mornings so Harper could have a break. One weekend afternoon, Adrian unexpectedly knocked on Harper's door. "Are you busy?" I thought. "Maybe we could take Noah to the lake for a while." Harper was momentarily surprised, then smiled and nodded. The SUV rolled slowly out of the gates, carrying 3 people who, just weeks ago, had been strangers. The lake was calm, a light breeze rippling its surface. Harper spread a large blanket on the grass, setting Noah in the middle with a stuffed giraffe. Adrian sat nearby, leaning back on his hands, eyes following his son's every movement. "He smiles more than before," Adrian said quietly. "Because he feels safe," Harper replied warmly. "Children, they know who's really there for them." Adrian stayed silent for a moment, as if weighing something. Then he turned to look at Harper, holding her gaze. "I owe you more than just a thank you." Harper shook her head. "You don't owe me anything. We're just trying to keep going." The next day, Harper saw Adrian reading to Noah before bed. His voice was deep, slightly rough, but steady and slow. Noah lay in his father's arms, eyes fluttering closed. Harper stood in the doorway, not stepping in, but feeling an unfamiliar warmth rise in her chest. From then on, each night, Adrian spent at least half an hour with his son before bed. The sleeping pills disappeared from his table, replaced by children's books and a small music box. One evening, as Harper was tidying toys in the living room, Adrian approached with 2 mugs of hot cocoa. "I thought we deserved a break." They sat out on the balcony, The garden below bathed in moonlight. With Noah asleep, the house no longer felt cold. Adrian spoke of the years he'd worked himself to exhaustion, chasing deals and missing moments with his wife. Harper spoke of her night classes, working by day and reading under streetlights. They didn't realize more than an hour had passed until the night air turned chilly. Adrian spoke softly. Maybe. For the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm living, not just existing. The night breeze stirred the lavender bushes below the balcony, their soft scent mingling with the cool, damp air. Harper set her empty cocoa mug on the table, turning to find Adrian still watching her, his eyes holding words he hadn't yet spoken. The space between them was barely half a meter, enough for Harper to feel the warmth from him slip through the thin night air. Moonlight traced the lines of his face, catching the depth in his gaze and the subtle tilt of his head. Harper hesitated, her heartbeat quickening. She didn't lean away, didn't move closer, just waited, as if for something inevitable. Adrian leaned in, lifting a hand to brush a stray lock of hair from her forehead, his fingertips grazing her cool skin. The kiss came unhurried, a soft meeting of lips, like a whisper that needed no words. For a moment, Harper closed her eyes, feeling her heartbeat sink with the sound of the wind. When Adrian drew back, his eyes remained locked on hers. "Are you cold?" he asked softly, as if needing a reason to stay close. Harper smiled, shook her head. But she knew. The warmth she felt didn't come from the breeze or the cocoa. The next morning, the sky was heavy and gray, hinting at rain. Harper had just started preparing porridge for Noah when a loud cry echoed from his room. She rushed upstairs to find him flushed, his breathing quick and uneven. "Noah?" She scooped him up, feeling the heat radiating from his forehead. Adrian appeared in the doorway, taking only a moment to understand. "He's running a fever." Without another word, they hurried Noah to the hospital. All the way there, Adrian sat in the back seat, holding his son tightly against his chest, pressing his lips to the boy's forehead, as if willing the fever away. Harper drove, her hands gripping the wheel, heart pounding in her chest. In the emergency room, the doctor quickly examined Noah and diagnosed a high fever with a middle ear infection. He needed IV fluids and overnight observation. Harper stood by the bed, holding Noah's tiny hand, occasionally adjusting his blanket. Adrian sat in the chair beside them, his eyes never leaving his son. "I'm afraid of losing him." Adrian's voice was low, almost a whisper. "After losing my wife, I thought I was used to loss, but I never was." Harper turned to meet his gaze, seeing in it fear, helplessness, and gratitude all at once. "You're not going to lose Noah," she said firmly. "And you won't lose yourself either, not if you keep fighting." He reached over and took her hand, the grip not tight, but warm enough to speak volumes. "If it weren't for you, I don't know where I'd be." They sat in silence, the steady beep of the heart monitor filling the room. Outside, rain began to fall, but inside, Adrian realized, for the first time, he wasn't facing his fear alone. Noah recovered faster than they expected. Within a few days, he was home again. In the nursery, his babbling and laughter returned, filling the house, once silent, with a warmth it hadn't known in years. Harper continued caring for him with her usual patience and tenderness, and Adrian was present more than ever, even occasionally changing diapers or playing with his son. Between them, something was quietly blooming. No grand confessions, just longer glances, hands that lingered when they touched. But that afternoon, everything seemed to shatter in minutes. Adrian had gone out to the supermarket. Harper was feeding Noah when she heard the tap of a cane on the floor and a woman's voice at the door. A woman in her 60s, hair neatly pinned, eyes sharp as glass. "You're Harper?" she asked, her tone stern. "Yes, Harper began, but the woman cut her off. "I'm Adrian's mother," the woman said, each word crisp and cold. "I've seen women like you before, coming from nowhere, thinking a rich man will be your salvation." The words landed like a whip. Harper's chest tightened, her grip on Noah faltering. "That's not who I am," she managed, her voice low. "Don't pretend. You're not part of this family, and you never will be. Pack your things and be gone before my son returns." As if sensing the tension, Noah began to cry loudly. Harper held him, trying to soothe him, but her hands shook. Rain began to fall outside, its patter mixing with Noah's cries, suffocating the room. Noah suddenly began to wail, reaching for Harper, but his grandmother held him tighter. Harper's heart ached. "Please, at least let me comfort him." "No." The answer was sharp, final. Harper placed her hand on the crib's edge, watching Noah cry until his face flushed. Tears welled in her eyes. In a whisper she said, "Be good, Noah. I'm sorry." Then she turned and walked quickly to the door. Outside, the rain had begun to fall in heavy, cold sheets. At that moment, Adrian returned from the supermarket, grocery bags in hand. Seeing Harper rushing out, her face pale, he dropped everything and ran after her. "Harper!" His voice cut through the rain like a lifeline. She kept walking, raindrops sliding down her cheeks. Or were they tears? Only when his hand closed around her arm did her steps falter. She turned slightly, enough for him to see the raw hurt in her eyes, before her shoulders gave way to trembling. "I can't. She said I'm just some—" Her voice faltered. Adrian pulled her into his arms, his hand smoothing her rain-soaked hair. "Listen to me. No one gets to say that about you. No one." He led her back to the house. In the living room, his mother still stood, her expression cold. Adrian didn't hesitate. "Mother, I need you to hear me. Harper is not who you think she is. She's the one who pulled me out of the darkness after I lost my wife. Without her, I would have lost myself. And Noah." Silence fell. The woman stood still, her eyes wavering. Finally, she asked, "You mean that?" "Every word," Adrian said, holding her gaze. "You have no idea. She held Noah when I couldn't. She saved both of us." The woman's shoulders trembled. She stepped toward Harper, eyes glistening. I'm sorry, I was wrong. I was afraid my son would be hurt again, but I didn't see that he'd already found the best thing that could happen to him." Harper nodded softly, tears mingling with the rain still clinging to her cheeks. In that moment, the coldness dissolved, leaving space for a new beginning. The atmosphere in the living room slowly warmed. Adrian's mother still stood there, but the cold edge in her eyes had softened into quiet contemplation. Harper lowered her gaze, the tension still lingering in her chest, yet there was a rare warmth in the older woman's expression. Adrian held Noah in his arms, kissing his son's forehead before turning to Harper. "You've been through so much, yet you chose to stay with me and my son. I can't and will never let anyone hurt you again." His mother looked at them, then sighed. "Adrian, if you trust her that much, I will learn to trust her too. My son has lost enough. Perhaps this is the good I haven't been able to see." Harper clasped her hands together, fighting back tears. "Thank you, ma'am." The next morning, the sky shone bright after days of rain. Adrian invited Harper and Noah to have breakfast in the back garden. Under the maple tree, golden sunlight streamed through the leaves, casting shimmering patterns across the table. Noah sat in his high chair, babbling nonsense. Harper was wiping his mouth when she noticed Adrian standing across from her, holding a small velvet box. "Adrian," she whispered. He knelt, opening the box to reveal a delicate diamond ring, the stone catching the morning light. "Harper Lane, you didn't just save Noah. You pulled me out of the darkness I thought I'd never escape. You gave me back a reason to wake up each morning. I don't want a life where you're not in it. Will you marry me?" Harper froze, her lips trembling. Every moment of the past months, finding Adrian unconscious that first night, caring for Noah together, the shared smiles and tears, flashed through her mind like a film. She nodded, tears spilling even as her smile brightened. "Yes, I will." Adrian rose and wrapped her tightly in his arms, while Noah laughed, as if he too felt the joy in the air. Adrian's mother stood on the porch, watching quietly, the corners of her mouth lifting in a smile. A new beginning under a sunlit sky. Weeks later, spring arrived, and with it, a day they had both been moving toward without even knowing. Adrian's back garden transformed into a vast canvas painted in pure white. Peonies, climbing roses, and lavender bloomed in gentle harmony. The sky was a deep blue, with a few clouds drifting lazily, as if reluctant to leave such a day. At the end of the stone path stood an arch covered in white flowers, beneath which rows of white-painted wooden chairs awaited their closest friends and family. Adrian wanted their wedding to be small, so every moment would feel warm and personal. Inside a small room facing the garden, Harper stood before a mirror. Her white gown hugged her waist before flowing softly down, delicate lace gracing her shoulders and back. In her hands was a bouquet of peonies, their petals as soft as if gathered from the clouds. She gazed at her reflection, her eyes shining not only with present joy, but also with the memory of everything she had endured to reach this day. Outside, Adrian wore a deep navy suit, holding Noah in one arm. The 18-month-old boy wore a miniature suit with a matching bow tie, and when he spotted Harper, he babbled, "Mama," with a delighted grin. Music began to play. Harper walked along the petal-strewn aisle, her eyes fixed only on Adrian at the end. He smiled, his gaze warm enough to chase away every shadow that had once darkened their lives. Their vows were simple, but carried weight. "I promise to love you for the rest of my life, to protect you from harm, and to raise our children with all the love I have," Adrian said, his voice steady and deep. "I promise to walk with you through every season of life, rain or shine, and to cherish our family as the most precious thing I've ever had," Harper replied, her eyes brimming. When Adrian kissed her beneath the white floral arch, applause filled the garden. Noah laughed, wrapping his arms around his father's neck as if sharing the joy. On the porch, Adrian's mother stood quietly, her gaze full of contentment. Married life unfolded in peace, though filled with the cheerful chaos of a home with children. Harper and Adrian cared for Noah together, and a year later their joy doubled with the arrival of a baby girl, Lily. The day Lily was born, Adrian stood by the hospital bed, holding the tiny newborn in his arms, his voice thick with emotion as he said to Harper, "Our family is complete." Noah quickly embraced his role as big brother, running circles around the crib singing strange songs only he understood, yet Lily slept soundly all the same. Adrian's mother had fully opened her heart, becoming a doting grandmother who often took both children into the garden to play. One summer afternoon, Harper sat beneath the maple tree with Lily asleep in her arms. On the lawn, Noah toddled after Adrian, his laughter ringing across the garden. Harper watched them, feeling her heart melt into gentle waves of warmth. She knew the road to happiness was never easy. But when love comes, it doesn't arrive to replace what was lost. It comes to remind us that happiness still exists and is always worth waiting for and holding on to.